students, and welcome back to another class of Christina Rossetti's Goblin Market. Yesterday we had talked about the experience which Laura had. She went out for the Goblin Men, ate their fruits, came back, and Lizzie was pretty judgmental about that because she said that goblins would harm maidens and they are not supposed to go out and enjoy the fruits. Today we'll take up from the lines we are left with. Golden head by golden head, like two pigeons in one nest, folded in each other's wings, they lay down in their curtained bed. So here Christina is talking about Lizzie and Laura. Their bond is shown through these lines, that they are very much intimate to each other, and they are almost inseparable because they are like two pigeons in one nest. So the connotation is very clear here, that she is almost hinting at a compatible partnership which Lizzie and Laura had. And then she continues with her set of similes to describe how close their bond was. Like two blossoms on one stem, like two flakes of new fallen snow, like two wands of ivory tipped with gold for awful kings. Moon and stars gazed in at them, wind sang to them lullaby, lumbering owls forebode to fly, not a bat flapped to and fro round their rest, cheek to cheek and breast to breast, locked together in one nest. Now I would like you to notice this word, awful kings. Why are the kings called awful here? Because you notice that word ivory. Okay, what is ivory? Ivory is obtained from the tusks of elephants, and they are very expensive materials which were very popular during the Victorian times, because in colonial England it was a matter of prestige to flaunt an ivory tusk. You have heard about ivory in Rape of the Lock also. Why awful? Because the kings who possess ivory are not good natured, because they are killing animals for their happiness. As we look through the descriptions here, as we look through the sets of similes, we'll notice that these words like new fallen snow, blossoms, ivory, these are all natural images which focus on the bond of intimacy that Laura and Lizzie had. And in a way it points at the concept of sisterhood, which was taken up by later feminism to a large extent. Their home is called a nest, and it is still seen as an uncorrupted nest. Okay, it is not corrupted by intrusion of a male figure, because sisterhood is a very pure bond where no corruption, no concept of domination exists, and it is shown to be a pristine paradise. Alright, okay, so we'll continue. Early in the morning, when the first cock crowed his warning, neat like bees, as sweet and busy, Laura rose with Lizzie, fetched in honey, milked the cows, aired and set to rights the house, kneaded cakes of whitest wheat, cakes for dainty mouths to eat. So when they wake up in the morning, they started on their domestic work, and Laura is seen to work a lot here. She fetched in honey, she milked the cows, she cleaned the house, and she prepared breakfast and food. She prepared a lot of stuff here. Next we can see. Next churn butter, whipped up cream, fed their poultry, sat and sewed. So see, the kind of work which is described here is entirely domestic, because the woman's space was the home, and Laura is seen to obediently follow the codes of the society, which instructs her to be a good homemaker. So we see the homemaker instincts of Laura working here. Talked as modest maidens should. So notice the word should here. Lizzie with an open heart, Laura in an absent dream. So Laura is working with Lizzie. Lizzie is rooted in her belief, in her ideas of what should be done, what should not be done, and Laura is in an absent dream. So you see that element of addiction has started to work on Laura. One content, one sick in part. So Laura is not completely sick right now, but she is not focusing on her domestic work. One warbling for the mere bright day's delight, one longing for the night. So you see that in the beginning of today's class, we had read the first paragraph, which showed that they were equals. Okay, they were like the two blossoms on one twig. But in the next paragraph, what we find is that there is a difference. Now, why is this difference created? This difference is created because of that external interference. Laura, she had the experience of the Goblin Men. Lizzie was shielded from that experience. Automatically, the effect of that experience is seen in their day-to-day chores. It's almost like, when you fall in love and you are absent-minded, you are thinking about something and you're not focusing on your work. That kind of a feeling is what Laura is going through. And she is longing for the night. At length, slow evening came. They went with pitchers to the reedy brook. So they went to fetch water from the nearby brook. Lizzie most placid in her look. Placid is what? When you are satisfied, you are content, you are not expecting anything, you are not tensed. Okay, so that kind of an expression is placid. Lizzie most placid in her look, Laura most like a leaping flame. Notice the word flame. They drew the gurgling water from its deep. Lizzie plucked purple and rich golden flags. Then, turning homeward, said, "The sunset flushes those furthest, loftiest crags." So see how Lizzie is noticing the sunset, right? And she wants Laura to accompany her back home. "Come, Laura, not another maiden lags. No willful squirrel wags. The beasts and birds are fast asleep." So the world of nature has gone to rest. It is not safe for them to loiter about anymore. But Laura loitered still among the rushes and said the bank was steep. So Laura deliberately wanted to pause, to wait, because she was expecting something. Alright? So that feeling of waiting for something to happen has already started in Laura. And said the hour was early still, the dew not fallen, the wind not chill. So Laura wants Lizzie to wait with her. Okay, she says that, okay, it's not twilight yet, it's not evening yet, we can loiter about a bit more and we can then go back. Listening ever but not catching the customary cry, come by, with its iterated jingle of sugar-baited words, not for all her watching, once discerning even one goblin, racing, whisking, tumbling, hobbling, let alone the herds that used to tramp along the glen in groups or single of brisk fruit merchant men. So Laura wanted to wait for the goblins, But not once did she see or spot any goblin anywhere, let alone the whole herd or group. So she was expecting them and she was disappointed. Till Lizzie urged. Now you see, this is a very strange thing, because Laura, who is already, who has already experienced the Goblin Men, she cannot hear them. Lizzie can. Okay. I hear the fruit call, but I dare not look. You should not loiter longer at this brook. Come with me home. The stars rise, the moon bends her arc, each glowworm winks her spark. Let us get home before the night grows dark. For clouds may gather, though this is summer weather. So she is warning Laura that come back home, because it's not safe anymore. The dusk is approaching. It's getting cloudy. Put out the lights and drench us through. Then if we lost our way, what should we do? So this is the panic in Lizzie, that she is afraid she might lose her way. Metaphorically, losing your way might be linked to, losing your virginity, losing your honor, because these are very important elements when you judge a woman. Not just in Victorian times, but even in today's times, we are scared as women. When we go out, we are scared that the evening is not good for us, because that is how society demands us to behave. Okay, demands the women to behave, that this is not safe for you. All right. Laura turned cold as stone to find her sister heard that cry alone. Laura thinks that, okay, I'm waiting for these goblins, I'm waiting for their call, but my sister can hear them. Why can't I? So you see, she is scared that the world of the Goblin Men is no more available to her. Okay, so the same kind of yearning what a drug addict feels when you just put that person in a place where the person will not have access to drugs anymore. That kind of yearning, that kind of panic we find in Laura. Laura turned cold as stone to find her sister heard that cry alone. That goblin cry, come buy our fruits, come buy. Must she then buy no more such dainty fruit? Must she no more such suckles pasture find? Gone deaf and blind? Her tree of life drooped from the root. So Laura is starting to getting depressed, that I will not be able to enjoy what I had enjoyed before. She said not one word in her heart's sore ache, but peering through the dimness, not discerning. Not discerning means she could not see anybody, nothing. Trudged home, her pitcher dripping all the way. So she was carrying this water pitcher, okay, and that was dripping. So she was very absent-minded. She was not careful about the water pitcher, and the water was dripping off. Trudged home, her pitcher dripping all the way, so crept to bed and lay silent till Lizzie slept. So Laura does not fall asleep, she just lies down. Then sat up in a passionate yearning, and gnashed her teeth for balked desire, and wept as if her heart would break. So just when Lizzie falls asleep, Laura gets up. She breaks into a huge panicked sob, and we understand that this is where she is getting alienated, separated from Lizzie, because she cannot share her experience with Lizzie anymore. So it is almost like when you are burdened by your own sin, you cannot communicate that to anybody. That becomes a tragedy for you, because alienation is the only thing that makes a tragedy possible. Okay, so here we have Laura suffering it all alone. Day after day, night after night, Laura kept watch in vain. So Laura wanted to go out and get those fruits again. She watched in vain. It was not successful. She was watching in vain. In sullen silence of exceeding pain, she never caught again the goblin cry, "Come by, come by." She never spied the goblin men. She could never see them again, hawking their fruits along the glen. But when the noon waxed bright, her hair grew thin and grey. She dwindled as the fair full moon doth turn to swift decay and burn her fire away. So the flame which she had when she first tasted the fruit, that flame started to die. So she is compared to a moon whose glory is gone in a fortnight. So you see how the things which happened to Genie have started to happen to Laura. One day, remembering her kernel stone, she set it by a wall that faced the south, dewed it with tears, hoped for a root. So remember that seed she brought back on the first day. So she thought that, okay, if I water this seed, this will grow into a plant and this will have that fruit and I can have that fruit. So she wanted to water that plant. And what was she watering it with? She was watering it with her tears. She set it by a wall that faced the south, dewed it with tears, hoped for a root, watched for a waxing shoot. But there came none, because that kernel stone was not going to be turning into a plant very soon. It never saw the sun. It never felt the trickling moisture run, while with sunk eyes and faded mouth, she dreamed of melons as a traveller sees false waves in desert drought, with shade of leaf-crowned trees, and burns the thirstier in the sandful breeze. You know, the traveller who travels on a desert, he gets more and more thirsty as he thinks that he can hallucinate that there is a river somewhere close. He dreams about an oasis. So in the same way, Laura is pining away, getting thirstier and thirstier with every day. She no more swept the house, tended the fowls or cows, fetched honey, kneaded cakes of wheat, brought water from the brook. So she did not do any work anymore. So you see how the codes that society imposes on women are questioned and brought to focus here, that if you are corrupted by the goblin men, you become unmaiden-like, because maidens are supposed to do housework. So when you are corrupted by goblin men, you have sinned, you have fallen, so you lose that connection with the household work, which otherwise is your duty. So Laura is not doing any household chore and would not eat. Tender Lizzie could not bear to watch her sister's cankerous care. So Lizzie was very upset too, because she never wanted Laura to suffer so much. Yet not to share, because Laura was like a closed book. Lizzie could not read her. Okay, apart from the first day when Laura came back and told Lizzie excitedly how happy she was. Now Laura has become a tight compartment, a closed compartment, and Lizzie cannot understand what is happening to Laura. She night and morning caught the goblin's cry, "Come buy our orchard fruits, come buy, come buy." So why were the goblins audible to Lizzie? Why could Lizzie hear them but Laura couldn't? Was it because the goblins lost interest in Laura once Laura was corrupted? Okay, they were looking for fresh meat. They were looking for a virgin maiden. Once temptation gets its victim, then it moves on to the next victim. Okay, so the goblin men are portrayed like that. She night and morning caught the goblin's cry, "Come buy our orchard fruits, come buy, come buy." Beside the brook, along the glen, She heard the tramp of goblin men, the yoke and stir poor Laura couldn't hear. Longed to buy fruit to comfort her, but feared to pay too dear. Dear means expensive, because here the payment is not monetary, economic. The payment is more, you can say the payment is more spiritual. You sell your soul to buy the fruits. So Lizzie wanted to buy the fruits for Laura, but she did not dare, because she knew that the price will be very high. It might harm her completely. It might totally destabilize her normalcy, and she was scared to go out buy them for Laura. She thought of Genie in her grave, who should have been a bride, but who for joys brides hope to have fell sick and died. So here there is a direct statement connecting the consumption of the goblin fruits with the pleasures that a bride might have. So clearly Christina Rossetti is very clear in relating the two experiences, experience of sex and experience of eating the fruits from the goblin men. So Genie had suffered because she wanted to get a taste of something which the brides will have. Okay, so again that Victorian notion of morality coming up here. In her grey prime, in earliest winter time, with the first glazing rime, with the first snowfall of crisp winter time, till Laura dwindling seemed knocking at death's door. Now Laura was going through that hard phase, and it was going to be a tough decision for Lizzie whether she should take that final step, should make that compromise for the sake of her sister. Then Lizzie weighed no more better and worse, but put a silver penny in her purse, kissed Laura, crossed the heath with clumps of firs at twilight, halted by the brook, and for the first time in her life began to listen and look. So what Laura did in the beginning, she was curious, she wanted to listen. The same thing Lizzie is doing right now. She chooses to listen and look for the goblin men. Laughed every goblin when they spied her peeping. So that was what the goblin men wanted. They wanted to corrupt more people. They wanted to bring more people into the folds of their temptation. So they were happy that they were successful in drawing out Lizzie, or in drawing Lizzie out of her bordered security. Okay. Laughed every goblin when they spied her peeping, came towards her hobbling, flying, running, leaping, puffing and blowing, chuckling, clapping, crowning, clucking, gobbling. So you see the words, the words themselves are very fluttery words, sweet and happy and fun-loving words. These are not words which have an element of foreboding. These are not words which appear to be evil. Okay, so this is what Christina is telling us. Christina Rossetti is very clear that temptation does not look like something evil. It looks like something tempting. It looks like something which you want to have. Otherwise, how can it tempt you? Alright? Mopping and mowing, full of airs and graces, pulling wry faces, demure grimaces. So they were giving off all kind of expressions of fun, of teasing. Okay, so they were very enthusiastic when Lizzie came. Cat-like and rat-like, rattle-like and vomit-like, the repetition. We had earlier seen how Christina Rossetti had described the goblin men. She is repeating. Now this element of repetition is it's a very potent device of any narrative poetry. It gives you that air of a fairy tale where the same phrases are repeated. Okay, so she is repeating the words like cat-like and rat-like, rattle-like and wombat-like, snail-paced in a hurry, parrot-voiced and whistler, helter-skelter, hurry-scurry, chattering like magpies, fluttering like pigeons, gliding like fishes, hugged her and kissed her, squeezed her and caressed her, stretched up their dishes, panniers and plates, look at her apples, russet and dun, bob at her cherries, bite at her peaches, citron and dates, grapes for the asking, pears red with basking, out in the sun, plums on their twigs, pluck them and suck them, pomegranates, figs. So they went on advertising the fruits they have. Okay, and in a way again you can relate the fruits to the sexual imagery which Christina Rossetti deliberately tries to bring in her poem. So they are offering Lizzie with everything they have and they are asking her to enjoy with them. Good folk, said Lizzie, mindful of Genie. So Lizzie is not able to forget what has happened to Genie. She is not able to forget what is happening to Laura. So she is very careful. She wants it to be an economic transaction, a monetary transaction, a market transaction, and she wants to keep herself as aloof, as distant as possible from the Goblin Men. Give me much and many, held out her apron, tossed them her penny. So she gave them some money. Nay, take a seat with us, honor and eat with us. So you see, the goblins were not interested in just selling their fruit. They wanted Lizzie to experience the taste with them. So they were not selling the objects called fruits. They were selling the experience called tasting. Okay, so you remember the lines from Paradise Lost, that whose mortal taste brought death and all our woe. Okay, so the taste is mortal. Okay, with the taste is important here. The fruit is not important. Okay, the experience of sitting down with the Goblin Men means something more than just slicing up the fruit and eating them. They answered grinning, our feast is but beginning, night yet is early, warm and dew pearly, wakeful and starry, such fruits as these no man can carry. Half their bloom would fly, half their dew would dry, half their flavor would pass by. So if you take these fruits and go home, then they will not taste as good. You should come and sit with us and we'll serve you, you can eat with us, then you can get the flavor as it is. Sit down and feast with us, be welcome guest with us, cheer you and rest with us. Thank you, said Lizzie, but one waits at home alone for me. So without further parleying, if you will not sell me any of your fruits, though much and many, give me back my silver penny I tossed you for a fee. So okay, if you don't want to sell me your fruits, I will not sit here and eat with you. If you don't want to sell me your fruits, give me back my money and I'll go back home. So she's very clear that no, she's not going to sit there and eat with them. They began to scratch their pates, no longer wagging, purring, but visibly demurring. So look at the changes in expression. The goblins are not looking so friendly anymore. Their expressions are getting more hard. They are not very happy about these words that Lizzie spoke. Grunting and snarling. One called her proud, cross-grained, uncivil. Their tones waxed loud, their looks were evil. Lashing their tails, they trod and hustled her, elbowed and jostled her. So earlier they caressed her. Now they are jostling her, elbowing her. So they are abusing her, treating her with violence. And this is almost like a gang rape that Lizzie is almost about to suffer. clawed with their nails, barking, mewing, hissing, mocking, tore her gown and soiled her stocking, twitched her hair out by the roots, stamped upon her tender feet, held her hands and squeezed their fruits against her mouth to make her eat. So see the kind of force they exerted. When Laura had come, there was no force there. She willingly participated in their feast. She willingly took their fruits. Lizzie did not give her consent. But the Goblin Men, they were not gentlemen. They did not care for consent. They forced themselves upon her and fed her the fruits. White and golden Lizzie stood like a lily in a flood, like a rock of blue veined stone, lashed by tides obstreperously, like a beacon left alone in a hoary soaring sea, sending up a golden fire, like a fruit-crowned orange tree. So she was like stranded on an ocean, like a ship is stranded on an ocean, and she was all alone. She was scared and she was suffering a lot, and she had nobody to turn to. Sore beset by wasp and bee, like a royal virgin town, topped with gilded dome and spire, close beleaguered by a fleet mad to tug her standard down. One may lead a horse to water, 20 cannot make him drink. So this is a proverb we have heard, that they could force themselves on Lizzie. They could, force the fruits inside her mouth, but she would not swallow anything. She would put everything in her mouth, and nobody could force her. Okay. Though the goblins cuffed and caught her, coaxed and fought her, bullied and besought her, scratched her, pinched her black as ink, kicked and knocked her, mauled and mocked her, Lizzie uttered not a word, would not open lip from lip. So she did not open her lip, lest they should cram a mouthful in. So she did not open her lips, because otherwise they would put some fruits inside her mouth. So she shut her mouth completely. But laughed in heart to feel the drip of juice that syruped all her face. But her whole face was smeared with the juice. Okay. And lodged in dimples of her chin. So she had dimples in her chin, the fruit juices smeared on her face, concentrated there, and streaked her neck with quake like curd. At last the evil people, worn out by her resistance, flung back her penny, kicked their fruit along whichever road they took, not leaving root or stone or shoot. Some writhed into the ground, some dived into the brook with ring and ripple. So they disappeared. They did not leave any trace. They did not leave any fruit or stone or kernel or anything. Some scudded on the gale without a sound. Some vanished in the distance. So the Goblin Men were tired, and they understood that, okay, this girl is not going to cooperate, so let's just leave. So they went away. In a smart ache tingle, Lizzie went her way. Knew not was it night or day. Sprang up the bank, tore through the fuzz, threaded copse and dingle, and heard her penny jingle bouncing in her purse. So she ran back when the Goblin Men disappeared. She ran and ran as if she feared some goblin man dogged her with gibe or curse or something worse. She did not know that, okay, if she had consumed the fruits, she knew what would have happened to her. But she had not consumed the fruits, but maybe the Goblin Men had cursed her, and that might be something very fatal. So she was not sure if she could manage to reach home in time. But not one goblin scurried after, nor was she pricked by fear. The kind heart made her windy paced. So she had a very kind heart. Why did she go there? She went there for her sister Laura. And this is what makes the difference here. Because while Laura's approach to the Goblin Men was because of self-centered reasons of, she wanted to enjoy something. Here Lizzie did not go there to enjoy anything. She went there because she wanted her sister to survive. Okay. The kind heart made her windy pace that urged her home, quite out of breath with haste and inward laughter. So she was happy that she was successful. She cried, "Laura," up the garden, "did you miss me? Come and kiss me. Never mind my bruises. Hug me, kiss me, suck my juices." Remember, she was carrying the fruit juices all smeared on her face and her neck. So, okay, these are very, very, very intimate sexual images that Christina is painting for us. But this is how, this is also a very important step in Lizzie's life which she is making, because she is crossing that border. Alright, she is also participating in Laura's enjoyment of the fruit sap. "Eat me, drink me, love me," she says this. Okay. "Hug me, kiss me, suck my juices, squeeze from goblin fruits for you, goblin pulp and goblin dew, eat me, drink me, love me, Laura, make much of me. For your sake I have braved the glen and had to do with goblin merchantmen." So here we find that the experience of kissing, the experience of eating the body has far more religious connotations than apparently it looks, because you remember the Corpus Christi feast, the body of Christ. Christ offered his body as a sacrificial lamb, and the same kind of image is carried forth in Lizzie's offering up her body. Alright, so Lizzie is offering her body almost like a Christ figure. Okay, that eat me, drink me, and so many connotations are there in this expression that you begin to feel that Christina Rossetti, above everything else, tries to focus on the sense organs which respond to these kinds of images. Alright? Laura started from her chair, flung her arms up in the air, clutched her hair. "Lizzie, Lizzie, have you tasted for my sake the fruit forbidden?" So this is what, now Laura is feeling the guilt, alright, that you have tasted the forbidden fruit for me. So there's a direct link which Rossetti is establishing with the fruits of the Goblin Men. "Must your light like mine be hidden? Your young life like mine be wasted?" So Laura is bothered badly. She's feeling the guilt that now you will also face the same thing which I have faced. She clung about her sister. Okay, so undone in mine undoing and ruined in my ruin, thirsty, cankered, goblin ridden, she clung about her sister, kissed and kissed and kissed her. Tears once again refreshed her shrunken eyes, dropping like rain after long sultry drought. Shaking with anguish, fear and pain, she kissed and kissed her with a hungry mouth. So you see, she cannot avoid the fruit juices. She cannot keep herself away. At the same time, she is aware of what Lizzie has gone through. Her lips began to scorch. That juice was wormwood to her tongue. She loathed the feast. She did not enjoy it anymore. So while those fruit juices were something she enjoyed in the beginning, now smeared on Lizzie's face, they have lost their taste. Okay? Writhing as one possessed, she leaped and sung, rent all her robe and wrung her hands in lamentable haste, and bet her breast. So Laura responded with irritation, because she could not get that same taste which she had in the beginning in that forest. Her locks streamed like the torch borne by a racer at full speed, or like the mane of horses in their flight, or like an eagle when she stems the light straight toward the sun, or like a caged thing freed, or like a flying flag when armies run. So she was in a totally panicked situation, because she could not get the taste which she was yearning for, and at the same time she felt that Lizzie had lost a lot in trying to get it for her. Swift fire spread through her veins, knocked at her heart, met the fire smouldering there, and overbore its lesser frame. She had consumed the fruit juice smeared on Lizzie's face. That acted almost like an antidote. Okay, so it did not give her the pleasure which she had got originally, but it somehow killed that yearning, killed that desire inside her. Met the fire smouldering there. So there was a fire inside her, the fire of desire. This fruit juice went inside her and overbore its lesser flame. She gorged on bitterness without a name. She felt bitter. Ah, fool, to choose such part of soul-consuming care, sense failed in the mortal strife, like the watchtower of a town which an earthquake shatters down, like a lightning-stricken mast, like a wind-uprooted tree spun about, like a foam-topped waterspout cast down headlong in the sea, she fell at last. So the antidote, you know what an antidote is? It's almost like a medicine which you have to get rid of an addiction. So the fruit juice smeared on Lizzie's face went inside Laura, and she finally, she fell down. Okay, she collapsed, and that worked as an antidote to her drug. Pleasure passed and anguish passed. So there was no pleasure anymore. There was no pain anymore. Is it death or is it life? So she survived. Life out of death. So she was almost getting dead. Lizzie brought her back. That night long Lizzie watched by her, counted her pulses flagging stir, felt for her breath. So throughout the long night, Lizzie took care of her sister. She was worried because she did not know about these antidotes and about how Laura could come out of this addiction, come out of this yearning. So she, like a dutiful sister, she sat by her bed, watched her throughout the night, held water to her lips and cooled her face with tears and fanning leaves. But when the first birds chirped about their eaves, and early reapers plodded to the place, so when the morning came of golden sheaves, and dew-wet grass bowed in the morning, winds so brisk to pass. So a beautiful morning is described here. And new buds with new day opened of cup-like lilies on the stream. Laura awoke as from a dream. So you see, the whole experience which Laura had before this is described as a dream, as a nightmare. It is as if she is renewed in vigor. Laughed in the innocent old way, hugged Lizzie, but not one thread of grey. So she had completely recovered. Her breath was sweet as May, and light danced in her eyes. The words which the poet is now using to describe Laura are the conventional words people use to describe maidens and virgins and pure and innocent people. Okay? Days, weeks, months, years afterwards, when both were wives, with children of their own, their mother hearts beset with fears, their lives bound up in tender lives. So now the poet is talking about a time in futurity when they have become they are married and they have become mothers and wives. So they are now totally rooted in their domestic worlds. Laura would call the little ones and tell them of her early prime. Laura would call her children and talk about her early young age. Those pleasant days long gone of not returning time. So there is an element of nostalgia in Laura, an element of fondness that we find, that somehow she thinks about those days as something which she loves to talk about. Would talk about the haunted glen, that wicked quaint fruit merchant men. Their fruits like honey to the throat, but poison in the blood. Men sell not such in any town. Would tell them how her sister stood in deadly peril to do her good and win the fiery antidote. Then joining hands to little hands would bid them cling together. For there is no friend like a sister in calm or stormy weather, to cheer one on the tedious way, to fetch one if one goes astray, to lift one if one totters down, to strengthen whilst one stands. So it ends with a very fond message to sisterhood, that the bond of sisterhood is something which is a very powerful one. It protects, and it protects not just by some force of external power. It protects through empathy. When one sister protects another, she even goes through the same experiences for the sake of protection. And this is how we see that the poem ends. That, okay, you might say that is this anti-man? It is not anti-man, because we don't see any judgment against the world of men. We see judgment against the world of the goblins, because goblins are not men, because there is this repeated statement that men do not sell such fruits. Okay, so goblins are straightaway corrupting agents, and what Laura does is she sees her experience as something beautiful also, because that experience gave her an insight into how her sister sacrificed herself, how her sister put Laura in front of herself and protected her, and somehow she feels blessed because that experience taught her sisterhood is of so much importance. Alright, so in our next class we will be going through certain themes and images, and we will be looking at some of the symbols to understand more about this concept of sisterhood, about this rising feminism, about why would we call this a pre-Raphaelite poem, the sensuousness in the images used. We will raise and we will address questions about sexuality, about intimacy, about relationships, about virginity, and about human choices, especially in terms of women's choices of the Victorian era. Alright, so I hope you stay tuned for the next class. So see you all very soon. Thank you.